my friends, host Eric here, host Talking Fast People, starting all over on this video because I accidentally stopped it instead of pausing it in the previous one. Aristotle, let's talk a little Aristotle. Somebody came into the chat the other day and the subject of Aristotle came up and they presented the question, an Aristotelian question, I guess. What makes an axe an axe? We might think of a few different questions of similar vibe, but different questions, such as what is an axe? How do I know that I have an axe? Or where's my axe? But that's not where that last one. Where's my axe is not equivalent at all to the other question. So, what makes an axe an axe? Here's the thing. Let's first answer the question, how do I know this is an axe? The answer to that question is, you'll either know it's an axe by your intuition, or your experience, or both. Those are the two ways of knowing. We have intuition or experience. That's how you will know it. And then they might say, no, I want you to compare the test. You say, if it's this, this, and this, then it's an axe. Okay, so they do that, right? The point is, okay, well then you no longer want to know how you know it's an axe. You want to know how to determine if it's an axe. Because knowing happens instantaneously. Determination requires some process of figuring out. So if you want to execute an algorithm of axe identification, that's not impossible, but then we have to recognize the fact that we're conscribing the definition of the test we're going to do for an axe because we only need it to serve a certain purpose argumentationally. It's important to note that all of these discussions are all exchanges of words. And words do a couple of things. Unfortunately. Leave that up. Pause for a second. So now let's go on to the question, what makes an axe an axe? Which is different than, how do I know this is an axe? The answer of what makes an axe is, the question is not, let me pause this again. So, it's a bit of an equivocation fallacy here, really. What makes an axe? Well, if you asked who makes an axe, the answer would be an axe maker. When you ask what makes an axe, you mean makes as in what determines that an axe is an axe. And the answer is people determine that with ways of determination, if they were going to determine it. If you wanted to have a definitive determination of it, you'd only have that in a context where a definitive determination of it was adequate. So, for example, let's say you have two very similar looking tools, one of which is an axe and one of which is actually a hatchet. And you need to train all your employees to distinguish between an axe and a hatchet. Well, now all of a sudden we can come up with some list of determinate distinctions because you're only having to distinguish between an axe and a hatchet. If you have to distinguish between an axe and everything else in the world, then that's not making a distinction, right? You're not distinguishing. The idea of making a determination of something is that it's done for a reason. If you're going to determine that, why are you determining axehood for things? if you want to have it be determinate, then we need that contextual stuff. Because determinateness sometimes is naturally occurring, like Y chromosome is determinate. If you have one, you're male. If you don't, you're female. Now, it is the case that some people are born X, Y, Y, but that doesn't change. That just is another example of the rule validating. They're male, and Y makes male. And please, let's just avoid all the culture war bullshit on this topic, please. It's a good enough distinction to make. It's easy to determine whether the light's on or off. You can make that distinction because, again, you have two things to compare against. You're actually trying to say, is this an instance of yeah or not? And because the context is going to determine, like, what's the problem here? We need more information. So you need some way to determine whether the light is on and off. Why is looking at it not working? And I go, no, I can tell that it's on. I see that it's on. But I want to test to prove that it's on. Again, why? Because argumentationally, the answer might be like, well, I want to test to prove that it's on because I'm going into a debate round later and I expect my opponent to run a critique that says, I don't really know whether the light is on and off, even though we can both see that it's on, and that accordingly, because I don't know that, for a variety of convoluted reasons, I should lose the debate round. So I'm asking you, Coach, give me a test so I can give them a test. Well, the answer to that is, that's not how you respond to that shit. You don't play their game. Ask them what you'd like to distinguish an axe from. And make them ask you one at a time. And then you can say, okay, this would be determined on that point. What else do you want to distinguish from an axe? Are you writing all this down? Because you're going to have to do it one thing at a time like that if you want it to be determinate. Because words are slippery. If I say anything that's, if I say an axe is an axe because it's for chopping, then a karate chop is also an axe. If I'm not saying that all things that chop are axes, then the answer, things that are for chopping are axes, is not a determinant, is wrong, and that doesn't work as a determinate thing. Keep in mind, axes are an object that have their own dedicated verb. There are a couple other things that you can chop with a knife, but you never really do much of anything but chop with an axe. So axes are unusually easy to talk about in that regard because you can make the claim that axes are for chopping and somehow it might seem informative, but again, it's a mistake that's predicated upon not understanding that intuition and experience are the ways that we know. Detached or self-interest or correctness interested. I'm trying to make this sound neutral. You have either subjective determination, how is this going to impact me, or objective determination of like a referee in a game who's trying to be fair and not calling the game in favor of the team that he roots for when he's not refereeing, So we recognize that there are those two different kinds of deliberation, that we can decide a question based on what we want. No, that's it. I rule in favor of my son. I will not hear another word spoken bad against him. for example, is everybody would say probably you've got a conflict of interest here, Judge, and you're being very subjective in your evaluation of the question because you love your son, and that means you have too much interest in the matter to be disinterested. So I think what Aristotle's overall trying to do with that, if I'm even representing that whole thing adequately, but regardless, as per the conversation, if he's doing, hold on. So I think what Aristotle's trying to do there is he's trying to explain intuition. How do I know that's an axe? When I look at it, I know it's an axe. Even though it doesn't look exactly the same as other axes, I can tell it's an axe. How do you know it's an axe? Your intuition, which is essentially the mature form of shape constancy. So there are two proto-knowledge skills that babies have. One of them is for SI, it's object permanence, and the other one is for NI, it's shape constancy. Easy enough to remember. Shape constancy is one you probably haven't heard of before, if you haven't heard of one of these before. It's not, you take an object that's got, like, say, a lot of different sides on it, like a dodecahedron, then it's not really possible for you to look at it from every conceivable angle, turning it just a teeny millimeter around in every direction so you've looked at every single speck of it. But you could theoretically do that. Now let's say you did that. Let's say you had to do that, though, to know what it was. Like, until you had seen it from every angle. If you saw it from a new angle, oh, Jesus. That was just a reflection. I thought it was a cat or something. It was just a reflection of that box on the hood of the car. Boy, that made me lose my train of thought. So, because intuition is instantaneous, there's no way for us to correctly explicate a process about it. It happens. 1 second you don't. 1 second you're not trying to know something that you remember. The next second you are, and you know it all of a sudden. You don't have to walk around your trash cans to make sure that's what they are. Just a quick glance of them. Maybe even you could recognize your trash cans. You're not even quite sure how you would possibly do it until you see them. You go, oh, I recognize that little dent right there. Actually, this is our trash can. Then you have something that's determinant for you in determining the trash can, but isn't determinant about whether something belongs to you as a trash can. So what Aristotle was doing there was kind of the same thing that Plato was getting at, which is the idea that how is it that we know what a horse is without referring to any specific horse? And his answer to that was because that every horse was a somehow bastardization of an ultimate proto, what they now call Platonic form of horse. Now, that's not something that makes any sense, obviously, because where is this form of horse that is supposedly there? I don't know. So instead, what we have is the reality that language is as powerful as it is because we can define, we can make and mix and match and engage different sets at our will, right? The ability to create different sets means we have the ability to create a category label that refers to, let's say, horses, and another set of, say, cows, and another set of, say, wait a minute, hold on. Okay, so here's the example. So you have the set of all rocks, and you have the set of all pieces of glass, and then you have an intersection between those, and it's called the set. The set of it's a different. Okay, you have a set up here called the set of all things that are rounded, curved, and smooth. And then some of the rocks are curved and smooth, and some of the glass are curved and smooth, right? So, but they won't comprise the entirety of the set. So you'll have, if you imagine your Venn diagrams, you got your circles, you'll have a little spot where they cross over that comprises all glass things that are curved and smooth, and all rocks that are curved and smooth. Pause. So, part of that set process is naming. We can imagine our early ancestors who didn't have the language developed yet over time, gradually over time. Language is something that evolves over time, and therefore understood the world in much simpler terms. Let's pretend they started out by just making one distinction: animal and rock. They started with everything, one set of everything at all. So they had no words. Then they say animal, rock, and they are successfully able to point to animals and rocks and name them correctly. Maybe at first there's confusion. Joe thinks animal means just that, the eagles, because when he first heard the word, it was pointing to an eagle. But gradually, everybody gets the gist. Oh, I see. This is including animal. This is including animal. Actually, they all just think everything's an animal then, because they've made the distinction. Things that move are animals, and things that don't move are rocks. Then they discover that they need more words, because some animals are much different than other animals. A big grizzly bear is very different for what you're going to do with it than a chicken. So it's not that we understand the concept of horse because the Platonic form of horse exists somewhere. We understand the concept of horse because we are conceptual beings who come up with ever more concepts, building on the concepts of the past. Therefore, conceptually becoming more sophisticated and no longer asking, so hopefully, such silly questions as Aristotle, or coming up with such silly answers as the Platonic form, when the real answers are right there in front of us. Knowing is a way of paying attention. Deciding is a way of paying attention as well. Creating, taking action, is ways of paying attention. Either creating stuff or creating impact, like creating metaphysical stuff or creating impact stuff. We know that interfacing with dynamic systems, be they physical or agential, those are ways of paying attention. And in fact, those are all of the ways of paying attention. Did I get them all? Intuition, experience, that's NISI for knowing. TIFI, that's disinterested, interested, deliberative. That comprises the epistemic functions or epistemologies. Now, action functions: extroverted intuition, extroverted sensing. These are the creating kinds of ways of attention. One creating words mostly, or other metaphysical expressions, and the other creating mostly actualities. And lastly, we have the two interface functions: extroverted thinking, extroverted feeling, TE and FE. TE is interfacing with non-agential but nevertheless dynamic systems, such as running a business. Business logic, is Winston's mom has said, is a good term for it, but it's more than just business logic. It's basically ordination, right? How to break down the job of meowing into a set of ordinated steps, such that when you get towards the end, you don't realize, oh no, I should have done this earlier. Now I have to take down the whole thing and start over. Extroverted feeling is about interfacing with people in ways that manage their perceptions, note their emotional state or the cues they give about their emotional state, and generally promote, I guess you'd say, fairness and approval of the fairness and the public versus solutions and the private. TE is solutions, FI is the private. FE is the public, TI is disinterest. Anyway, I'm done with this video now. I'm sorry. I'm just rambling on at the end. Wait, how many minutes is it? Oh my god, it's so long. So next time somebody tells you about the Platonic form, don't believe the hype. They just don't understand how words work. No, I'm sorry, they just don't understand attentional manners. They may or may, they probably also don't understand how words work. The verb to be, you gotta be careful with it. You gotta what? Be careful with it, Eric? Yeah, that's not me using the be verb exactly because it's working as an infinitive. The point is, I don't try not to use them. I'm just saying there's something called English prime where it excludes all the metaphorical stuff, which includes all linking verbs like be verbs or seems. Jody seems restless. Seems is a linking verb. Eric, you fucked up. You completely failed to end this video properly. And you cursed unnecessarily in a video that prior to that I don't think had any cursing at all. Well, for another fine mess you've gotten us into, sir. Thanks for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, I love you. And have a great day.